Alrighty, so last weekend we finally got our hands on Chrono Odyssey, the upcoming MMORPG that is scheduled to release sometime in Q4 of this year. Although for reasons we'll get into, I'm thinking they'll need a bit more time before pushing this one out the door. Or not, it's up to them. The game could really use it though. Did that tree just pop in? It did. Look at that mountain range back there. And look, I actually don't hate this as much as many people seem to have. Like, genuinely, there are things about the game I really enjoyed while playing these past few days. But at the same time, there are far many more massive glaring issues that would be in the developer's best interest to address before slapping a 1.0 on it and kicking it out into the wild. In its current state, what they made playable to the public over this past weekend, it's not ready, not even close in my opinion. I just like look at how bad this looks. Again, I'm on the high setting. I could bump it up to epic. It goes from looking, I think it's really, well, besides the pop-in and like poor textures, the strange overblown lighting, and it's weird because this is used in other games, but I think they're just like overusing the overexposure or something. But it's an older build. Yeah. We'll get to that, don't worry. All right, so I want to start off this video by talking about what I like, because as I said, there are things that I really enjoyed while playing the game. First up is its classic MMO structure. The game's got this big open world. You'll see other players running all over the place, some of them looking a little bit weirder than others, but generally there's still people around, even if there might be immersion breaking at times. You know, I don't know if giving players the ultimate freedom to make characters however they want is the best idea. You got a bunch of different points of interest that are rather interesting looking and full of enemies, side quests to complete, mini bosses to take on. There's actually a lot of secrets to discover in the world and various parts of it, far more than what I expected. It's got a mix of both solo and group content to engage with, and there are world bosses seemingly everywhere. I felt like in every new area that I went, I was stumbling into another world boss that one or more players were fighting against, which was really cool. You just literally stumble into these world bosses. Maybe they've got preset spawn locations. In fact, they probably do, if I were to guess. And there's like a bunch of them. I keep stumbling into them. Now, we did only have access to the first few zones of the game, but I will say that the mix of content that they had in there and how the whole thing was structured, I was genuinely impressed with. Like, I really, really liked it. Something else I really like about the game is some of the environments. Like, this, look at this shit. This is cool. Look at this. I'm just like, the spider cave. Looks, this is neat. I haven't seen this before. Just came across this. This looks pretty cool. Yeah, like, so this area here that we're going to for our bounty quest, like, this looks cool. It's a cool little environment. Like, they've got some neat looking POIs. Another thing I really enjoyed was the combat. Playing as the ranger, I was primarily using the crossbows with the rapier as like my backup weapon for whenever I ran out of focus. And I'll just say, like, the simple act of even basic attacking, but then also using abilities against groups of enemies or single bosses, it all had a nice feel to it. There was a nice sense of weightiness and impactfulness, a nice visceral feel to the game's action combat. Now, sure, as far as action MMO combat goes, I've definitely played better, but I've also played far, far worse. Weapon swapping is snappy as hell. Use an ability, do a backflip, so I can activate the swap midair. A backflip and hit Q, and then when I land, it swaps instantly. That's pretty slick. This definitely felt decent to me, I would say. There are a few things that I think need to be tuned up for sure, like some of the crazy distorted audio and some way over the top screen shake on a few abilities. But other than those things, I liked engaging with combat. I liked fighting enemies, and that's pretty important to me. Another thing that I also really enjoyed was some of the content variety, with there being different types of content to engage with. So outside of like all of the basic MMO stuff where you'll be going around doing kill or fetch quests along with gathering resources for crafting and farming mobs for gaining experience, they also have some neat additional side activities in here. One of my favorites being the trials. I think these are really cool. I liked every one that I engaged with. It's a really, really interesting system, and I hope they get just more complex and interesting as the game progresses. All right, so here's another trial. These have thus far for me basically been like obstacle courses, although I do believe some of them are more boss fighty. I am holding. Son of... Did you just play a trick on me? This is cool as hell. So far, this is the third trial that I've seen. I genuinely really like it. This isn't like a MMO dungeon where you're clearing ads and then bosses. It's more obstacle coursey with some enemies in between. But I do like that. Like, I really do. Something else that I also really enjoyed was just the whole environment and world, the game setting, and the play space that they've built. In spite of the fact that it can look rather washed out at times with terrible lighting, I actually really enjoyed the setting and the environment. Now, I wish it visually looked better for sure, and a lot of the technical issues, I definitely hope they get ironed out, but I have enjoyed exploring the world and seeing the different areas within the game. It's also got this nice, darker, medieval fantasy tone across the board, and yeah, some interesting points of interest with different things like castles, towns, ruins, and various other, again, fantasy medieval places to explore. And then lastly, in the list of positives, I kind of like that the game has this old school MMO feel. Now, I expect many are going to find this as like a negative, but I almost appreciated some of its rougher edges, frankly. This looks like a game from 2000. Yeah, I mean, like, if you really go back and look at the games from 2000, they definitely looked much worse, but it gives those vibes. I feel you. Funny enough, though, for me, that's like, it's almost nostalgic in that sense. I think that's part of the reason I like it. It's like, oh yeah, it's got that kind of static MMO feel to it. Like, just this field, NPCs plopped in it. You know what I mean? Like that kind of vibe. Just like see these wolves like just chilling. All right, so that does it for the positives. Now let's move on to the list of cons. But before we dive into some of the game's most glaring issues, I want to address all of this talk about this being an older build and the fact that this is like being used as a way to hand wave or write off any criticisms that people have had of what we saw over the playtest weekend. I think it's important to keep in mind that this is not even remotely unique to Chrono Odyssey or to this playtest. Every time we play a preview, a demo, an alpha, a beta, or some variation of a pre-release version of a game, it is always an older build, with the developers having a more up-to-date internal build that they are working on and updating weekly, if not even daily. This is the case for every build that developers make playable to the public, as they do in playtest and betas and alphas, including the games that don't have a massive heap of glaring issues that people are out there complaining about. Those are also older builds. It's just we don't hear the devs talking about them being older builds because nobody is complaining. So like when you play a pre-release test, people are enjoying the game and not complaining about technical issues and bugs and performance and all sorts of things. The developers aren't coming out being like, whoa, guys, it's an older build, because they don't have to. It's only when people are crying about there being issues, rightfully so in a lot of cases, and in this case, that the devs feel the need to come out and remind everyone that it's an older build. But again, by the nature of game development, we only ever see older builds. They only ever give us the most stable version of the game that they have. They most definitely have a newer build of Chrono Odyssey, but it likely has a huge list of its own issues that they weren't comfortable with packaging and releasing for us to download and play over the course of this weekend. So yeah, the point being, it being an older build is simply a poor excuse to write off any and all criticisms. After all, what's the point of a playtest if not for gathering feedback from criticisms that are being laid out there? So with that said, let's move on to the list of things that definitely needs improving. For starters, technically, this game is a mess across the board. In fact, to put it plainly, this game looks and runs like crap. I have experienced, first of all, a bunch of different bugs while playing. What? Wait. What's happening? Where did the mountain go? What the f? I'm in the mountain. Oh, I'm swimming. I'm swimming in the mountain. All right. There it is. There's also been a load of glitchy or just downright non-functional animations. Oh, damn, this something is wrong with their cloaks. They try to animate, but then they give up halfway through. Look at the cloak. Wait. Oh no, it looks better when I zoom in. Okay, something's going on here. Max camera zoom, it turns into a stiff board. So the closer your camera is, the more fluid the cloak. I don't understand. Is anyone a game developer? Does that make any flipping sense? The game has insane levels of pop-in all over the place. Wherever you look, things are popping into and out of existence, sometimes 2 feet in front of you. Oh no, this is the strobe light effect that I was telling you about. Look at this. Like, what the F is going on? Oh, wait, where'd that rock come from? I have got draw distance detail set to high. Come on, guys. I don't know. You know what's funny too? I actually don't hate this game so far, but it's got a lot of it. Why is that shrub disappearing as I get closer to it? Oh, because those are the shrubs, those are the fake shrubs that aren't as detailed. But then as you get closer, those disappear, and I'm guessing they're gonna reappear. Oh, they don't disappear. I see. They were reappeared with something that had a higher texture quality. It's just the contrast between the low texture quality and the coloring between the low texture quality and the high texture quality is so dramatic that it looks like there's shrubs that disappear, but then, yes, they are replaced with more detail. I guess we'll call those more detailed shrubs. This is awful, honestly. The lighting in this game is downright awful. I can confidently say that I have never seen worse lighting of a game environment in all of the betas that I've ever played. Like, I don't know how it looks this bad and still got the stamp of approval for public consumption. I literally don't get it. Like, I tried messing with the contrast and just trying to make it not look like this. Something with the lighting in this game is way off. This is like way too overexposed. Like, it's fine when it's like that at time. It's just, I think they just have some tuning to do with when and how they use that overexposure, because it makes sense in instances like when you're coming out of a dark cave and then it's just like bright white. That's how it's supposed to be, but I don't know why it's this overexposed where I'm just like chilling in town. See what I mean? There's something wrong here. This is probably how it should more look like, but then all of a sudden it's like, what? I can't, I'm looking into the sun. What's happening? How come the lighting looks wonky everywhere? Because the lighting looks wonky everywhere. Yeah. Your level of perception is in tune with what I'm experiencing as well. And then lastly, performance for tons of people has been really bad. I had to lower the resolution scale in order to get a smooth frame rate while playing, and I am running on a fairly beefy rig. I've got an RTX 4090, an i9 14900K, I got 64 gigs of RAM. Like, I have got a solid computer, runs most games perfectly smoothly, but I definitely had to tweak and play with the settings in order to get a smooth frame rate. Now, I eventually got it to a pretty good spot, but a lot of people didn't get there, so we just gotta say it. I mean, just top to bottom, this game is in need of a ton of technical work and improvements. Launching anywhere near this level of technical issues will cause the game to flop, without question. Like everything else I like about the game be damned, most of the public will write off this project entirely if the release version is not significantly better than what we just played. So I hope this older build is way, 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 way worse than the newer build that they can't wait to show us. I hope that is the case. Genuinely, I do. Also, while we're on the topic of how the game looks and performs, can we just point out the fact that the game in practice looks literally nothing like those pre-release early gameplay trailers they showed us, like not even close. Whatever they showed us before looks like an entirely different game that isn't Chrono Odyssey. So I don't know. It's not an uncommon issue in the games industry for like these fake gameplay trailers. But yeah, just again, worth pointing out. Something else I think is worth noting in the cons is how extremely dated the game feels across the board. Now, I will admit, for me, there is actually a certain level of nostalgia. I think some of the structure and presentation, however, will feel very dated for a lot of people and will turn them off. So I'm talking about just kind of the general static feeling to the world and the play space. There isn't a lot of motion and life in the environment. It seems like things are just placed there, going down to just like the enemy spawns that just sit in place and don't do anything. Another thing that feels extremely old school MMO is like the non-existent AI. It's definitely one of those games where you aggro enemies and then they just turn to you and run at you, attacking you, and there's not much like intelligence to coincide with the artificial part of it. They just like aggro you and they do their attack animations and you hope you don't get hit by those hitboxes, right? And yeah, a lot of these things definitely make it feel a lot like MMOs of the past, which once more, I don't mind personally, but I suspect many people will. That will be a negative for a lot of people. That's my guess. Also, as much as I enjoy the combat, like I think it does have a satisfying feel, it's also wonky in a lot of aspects. Like the hitboxes seem to be a bit of a mess and unpredictable at times. Enemy movement and their attacks attacks also can feel really glitchy and disjointed, making it difficult to predict and react properly to what they're gonna do, which in an action combat game means you're gonna get hit, especially this is the case even more so if you're playing a melee focused class. A lot of the sound effects need work. There was like an over distortion to a lot of them that I think needs another or several passes. And then holy crap, the screen shake in this game is so over the top. I don't necessarily even want to turn it off because screen shake is like part of the total equation in terms of the gameplay feel and the sense of feedback to you casting abilities. I'm just like shooting poison arrows and it's like an earthquake going on my screen. And right now in the game, they don't have an option to turn it off, but more importantly for me, I would like a slider so I can adjust the screen shake without removing it entirely. They don't have either of those, to the point where I actually literally stopped using one of my abilities because the screen shake was so aggressive. It was awful. So I was just like, I'm not using the skill anymore. I'm going to move on to using different skills. That's how bad it was. That screen shake is horrendous. Holy crap. Is it just with the Ivy? So the Ivy that I launch out, it ticks. And when it's ticking, my entire screen earthquakes. It's too much, dude. Holy crap, I don't need that. Makes me just not want to use the skill. That's awful, dude. Oh, and also, let's talk about New World. At first, I thought I was sort of just imagining things, but as time went on, more and more started to pile up to the point that it became pretty clear this game, on several levels, is just straight up copying New World, without question. And I don't mean just like in the kind of game they're building. It's not like, hey, they're building a game that's similar to New World. No, I mean, it looks like they are copying and pasting and then making a few tweaks here and there to a bunch of like systems, features, points of interest, the UI elements, and more. Ripping it wholesale out of New World, putting their own little Chrono Odyssey shine on it, and then calling it a day. Probably the biggest thing that's like looks so New World to me is like the inventory system. Like the way they've done this with the little Roman numeral, like just the whole presentation is very New Worldian. The supply chest in the game look incredibly similar, even to the shimmer and coloring of the light that comes off them. And then just the visual presentation of like the gathering and the crafting systems, also incredibly reminiscent of New World. Now, if you think any of those examples are stretching it, I think the biggest, most obvious red flag that I just saw earlier today is the PvP forts that are in Chrono Odyssey are an identical structure and layout to those that are in New World. It's literally as if they took the exact same blueprints of these points of interest and then just remade them with different materials and moved a few things around here and there. It's just crazy how similar these forts look to one another, clearly pulling some massive inspiration here. And it's not just that they're wooden forts. I mean, look at these things side by side. They look like identical structures just made with different materials. It is crazy. And then also there are some similarities, like to a lesser degree, but you could point to things like the combat system being similar, how they do the weapon swapping, even the weapon skill trees look a lot similar, and maybe even just the general look to some of the world and the POIs, beyond the POI that is a clear, direct one-for-one copy made with different materials. Outside of that, a lot of the other POIs look very similar to those in New World. Now, its similarities, if not downright copying of New World aside though, the game has far more pressing issues that need to be addressed prior to release. Forget about any New World comparisons. And I really hope that whatever their newer Eternal build looks like, along with whatever else they're working on from this point forward, that they do work on improving those things, because there were things about this that I genuinely enjoyed and I am looking forward to playing again, but there just needs to be a lot improved for this game not to flop as far as I'm concerned. And then lastly, this isn't really a point of feedback from the playtest, but I would be remiss not to mention the fact that this game will, despite all of their claims otherwise, it will probably still have pay to win in some capacity. In fact, in the same breath that they said they wouldn't have pay to win in their game, they also added the fact that they would be selling convenience features, which by many people's definition is in fact pay to win. None of that is even taking into account the whatever monetization they end up coming out with. Again, they've talked about pretty aggressively that there will not be pay to win in this game. I just think we'll probably going down to the semantics argument again of what they qualify as pay to win. Because like I've said before, this is being published by Kakao Games. Kakao Games has never launched an MMO that didn't have pay to win. It's not happened. I haven't, maybe that's not a factual statement. I have not played I've played a few different Kakao MMOs. They have Kakao published, and they have always had some form of paying for progression or accelerating, you know, again, bypassing the inconvenience that's built into the game, right? Decreasing the grind, decreasing the travel time, decreasing the harvesting times, increasing the rate in which you level up any of your professions, you know, whether or not that's tied to the gear or tied to the systems that feed into the gear, or even if it's separate from gear but some other form of power. No, solo dungeon. Okay. Requires a key, which I don't have. How much is that in the cash shop? Does anybody know? So he only sells 5 a week. That means you can only run 5 trials a week, right? There's not going to be any other way of getting those keys. Here's all the money they're going to... This is Kakao swimming in their money from key sales. That might not be a deal breaker for some. It's definitely not going to stop me from at least trying the game, but it will stop me from any chance of playing it long term. So there you go. Now, after this weekend, I can confidently say that in spite of all the issues we've talked about, I saw enough that I liked and had a fun enough time that I am definitely planning to check this game out once it releases. I definitely hope that they make some massive improvements in all of the areas mentioned, but otherwise, like, I'm sure I will at least have a few days, if not a week or two worth of fun, that's what I'm looking for out of video games. I'm looking for entertainment. If I can be entertained in spite of flaws for a short while, I'm at least happy to experience that and then put it down when I'm no longer entertained. I will say whenever they have their next playtest without an NDA, I will be jumping back in and I will be sure to update my thoughts and impressions and discuss anything that's gotten better or worse, and also see how the New World comparisons are still stacking up. As for their projected 2025 Q4 release, I don't know, man. Like, unless this most recent build is leagues better than what we played this weekend, there's no way. I mean, I get they can release it in whatever state they want it to. I'm just saying, if we don't see massive improvements, I expect the game to be a complete flop and probably have mostly negative reviews on Steam, even though there's things about it that I liked playing, and I'm sure I'm still going to have some fun in the future with Chrono Odyssey. We will see, though. We will see, supposedly later this year, right? That does it for today's video, though. Thank you, as always, for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you all in the next one. Take it easy.